Teachers of Reddit, what's the most cringe-worthy thing a student of yours has done to impress a crush? One of my students decided to steal his mother's Michael Kors watch to give to a girl who had a boyfriend for Valentine's Day. The girl was so excited but still said no to him when he asked her out. They came in the next day and I find out that the kid's uncle went to the girl's house to get the watch back after his mom realized he stole it. Poor kid never heard the end of that. Yikes, this actually made me cringe. Kid brought a bucket of fried chicken, walked up to a girl in the hallway with a sign that said X your legs and breasts are better. Prom? Dude wrote prom on his butt. During lunch he climbs on top of a table, yells, "Hey Kate," and moons like 200 people including Kate. He got in some serious trouble. They went to prom together. Honestly must have been difficult to do that. The writing part. Guy comes up on board to help me graph some functions. He really likes one of the popular girls, who frequently tells him to shut up in class. He draws the XY axis, and when I start telling him information about the function, he starts drawing a giant heart instead, then proceeds to write the girl's name next to it. The entire class is laughing and she's burying her head in her bag. I was too dumbfounded to even react. Just watch as he added details to the heart, like shading etc. He was actually quite the artist. Hahaha, what a dude. Not a teacher but a classmate of mine brought a shoebox with a sweet potato inside and asked his crush, "Will you be my sweet potato at prom?" The entire class was laughing their asses off and the girl looked so uncomfortable as she said no. Not a teacher, and this was a student with a crush on one of the English teachers. He was one of the popular boys and could have dated any girl he wanted, and she was a younger teacher in her late 20s. When we were in the 10th grade this teacher left to work at another school, but the school had a special assembly to farewell her. As his goodbye this boy serenades her with Slide by the Goo Goo Dolls in front of the whole school, with lyrics like "I wanna wake up where you are." The school collectively cringed. I cringe anytime my parents told this story to anyone. I was in 3rd grade or so and I had male friends, one of which I had a crush on. They would talk each week about the Sunshine Girl, which was a girl in the newspaper each week, in a bathing suit, like a full page picture of one. They would talk about how hot she was etc. Well, I was snooping in my parents' room and I found Playboys hidden, and I thought this will make me popular with Shane, my crush. So I took them to school. He did like them. I got in trouble. My teacher was super mad. My parents were really mad. My mom made my dad throw all his Playboys out and they would tell their friends the story and laugh, and I would hear them talking from my room and cry to myself. Obligatory, not a teacher, just a parent. I have a 7th grade, 12-year-old daughter who has a crush on the 7th grade boy across the street. I'm pretty sure he feels a similar way about her but has no idea what to do or how to act around her. Anyway, a few weeks ago at a high school football game, both my girls were hanging out at a table near the snack bar with a group of girls. A boy from across the street is nearby with the group of boys. He proceeds to tell his buddies something and gestures to the girls' table. His buddies egg him on and he starts over towards the girls' table. As he makes his way over, he takes a swig of the Powerade he brought with him. Once he gets in front of the girls' table, he proceeds to pretend to gag and vomit out the Powerade he's been holding in his mouth. After his apparently award-worthy performance, he looks directly at my daughter to see her reaction. A kicker is she saw none of it as she was talking to her friend the entire time. He then looks over at my other daughter, who watched the whole thing and acted it out for us later. To find her looking at him like what the F was that, he proceeded to walk back to his group of friends casting dejected looks over his shoulder at my 7th grade daughter. His friends laid into him when he made it back to the group. When I asked my husband what sort of thought process goes into something like this, he said absolutely none. It's basically girl plus Powerade equals I got this. Poor kid, she totally likes him too. I'm 20-year-old guy now and I still don't understand how these kids have the confidence to do stupid crap like this in front of girls they like. I just steal a few glances and call myself lucky if she looks back. Long story short, your salutatorian speech, in front of a few hundred people, is not the opportunity to pour your heart out to your crush from the last 4 years. A girl liked a boy in grade 7. She then convinced her friends to come up during a French presentation to join her in a crappy dance routine confessing her love. He rejected her later. Rip, A+ for the effort though. I was teaching 3rd grade. One of my students, let's call him Patrick, asked me to attend his brother's piano recital with him and his parents. To sweeten the deal, Patrick said there'd be dinner at a fancy restaurant afterwards. I politely declined and his parents highly enjoyed the story at parent-teacher conference time. Not a teacher, but looking back one thing has always stuck in my head. It was probably around middle school, but this kid in my homeroom would print off pictures of Naruto characters and write love notes on the back and tape them to his crush's table. I was embarrassed for him, since he seemed to think it was a perfectly normal thing to do. Every school has either one or several of those freaking Naruto kids, I swear. School pep assembly a couple weeks before prom. Senior class president was running games and activities, calling down volunteers, etc. Basically conducting the assembly. At one point, he told everyone to stand up and then to sit down if anything he said applied to them. For example, if you have math 2nd period, if you're a freshman, yada yada. Eventually, one girl was left, who was the winner, and she was called to the center of the room. He told her to cover her eyes and spin in a circle, and as this was happening a bunch of his buddies ran up with flowers and prom on a massive poster. She said no. Not a teacher, but back in high school the teachers at our school would sell Valentine's lollies so people could send them to their crushes anonymously. They were $1 a lolly and one guy spent $25 on them to send to one girl. However, she didn't like the flavor so gave them all away to some guy that turned out she was dating. Unfortunately, the kid who sent her the lollies didn't know she was already dating someone, and neither did she end up finding out who sent her them. Not a teacher, but when I was in school, primary 7, so age 10/11, a boy in my class who we'll call Cole really liked a girl we'll call Emma. Emma was one of those children who thinks they are already 26 with a decent paying job and their own apartment. She had designer clothes and watched soaps and had a Friends box set. Cole liked to lick windows. Cole did this. He stole his mum's gold necklace and gave it to Emma on Valentine's Day. His mum had to come into the school to reclaim it. He was rejected by Emma and she kept bringing up the Valentine's Day thing and saying her mum brought the necklace to be elevated and it wasn't real gold. He tried unsuccessfully to win her back and also get back at her by spreading rumors that she gave him a BJ. I don't think he really knew what that meant. After all else failed, he decided to claim his territory by rubbing his butt hard and enthusiastically on her seat when she wasn't sitting on it. He also announced to the whole class what he was doing and why he was doing it. I remember in my 8th grade science class, in front of the whole class, I referred to a girl I had a crush on as the cute one over there. Made other science and math classes awkward. Please tell me you weren't a teacher. Socially awkward kid sets up a picnic table in the middle of a cafeteria at a Saturday event. Proceeds to publicly ask a girl who was extremely out of his league on a date. Not proud, but I noped the F out of there before I saw how it went down. I nearly threw up out of embarrassment for that poor kid. He brought in his harmonica and then proceeded to have a 5-minute soliloquy about different harmonicas, how to store them, when to breathe in and when to exhale, complete with examples. I say soliloquy because the girl that he was talking to never said a word. When I thought he couldn't be any more annoying, he whips out a dab. High school sophomore. Oh god, I had been imagining a 6th, maybe 8th grader at most. Little 11 years old asked my partner, teacher, to help him record the song he wrote for his crush. Adorably cringeworthy, but I think they ended up together for the summer holidays. Obligatory, not a teacher, yet, but, time for me to share just one of the cringy bulls I did to try and impress girls in middle school. Locks on our lockers were optional and up to student choice, and my crush had elected not to do so. I was at school late due to extracurricular activity, and saw the opportunity to write an extremely cliché love poem on scrap paper. Classy, I know, and place it in her locker. Later that night, I had a "I've made a terrible mistake" moment, and frantically texted my friend with an adjacent locker to get to school before her and remove it. My friend kept the poem, and she used it for blackmailing purposes, entirely joking once, nothing serious, for the rest of our school days. This sounds like start of a CSI case. There was one guy at my school who was throwing rocks at girls to try and impress him. Because of that incident and a couple others, the vice principal gathered up all the 8th grade boys and gave them a lecture about sexual harassment. Good. Not a teacher, but I was a really cringe-worthy teenager. I thought that the best way to get a girl to like you was to suddenly like everything that she did and agree with her on everything. She mentioned she likes a show I've never even heard of. It was my favorite show ever. She likes a certain actress. They're my all-time favorite. Looking back on it, I realize how creepy and annoying that is. In 6th grade, I got this girl I had a crush on, a stuffed unicorn and a box of chocolates. She took and hugged the unicorn, then very quickly handed it back. One of my female friends took it. Later on that day, my friends and I ate the chocolates. Also, she was supposed to go to the dance with me, but she didn't show up. Not sure if this counts, but my dad had a crush on my computer teacher and convinced me to ask her if she was single. I then, of my own accord, asked if she'd be my new mom. I was in 1st grade. She said no. In 4th grade, I walked up to her and kissed her back. She turned around with a WTF expression, and I crap you not. I pushed my glasses up and say, you gonna kiss back? I hate myself. This is the best one. Obligatory, not a teacher, but a student. My junior year, I was in a school production of Beauty and the Beast. The guy that played Gaston planned to ask the girl who played Belle to prom using the last line of his solo song, "Me, Belle, when you marry me," by changing it to "Belle, will you go to prom with me on closing night?" Fortunately, he told his best friend, who told a few of us, and we were able to talk him out of it and save the show and him from embarrassment. Not that great a story, but it fits. While teaching at a university, math of some kind, I used overheads. I know, prehistoric. Anyhow, kid takes one of my blank overhead and writes something like, "Hey Joanne, how about a drink after class?" Kirk, and slips it into my pile. I am going through the stack and get to it in the middle of class. Notice it's clearly not mine. Hold it up in the air and read it, and just think, what the frick? I look at the kid and he mouths please and I mouth no and shake my head. I put it to the side. Lecture ends. I call him up. I'm like, "Kirk, you really think that'll get you a date?" And he's like, "Yeah, I thought it'd get her attention." And I was like, "Don't be like that guy. Call her out. Embarrass her, it's just not." And he cuts me off, "It is cool." And I was like, "Don't be a loser, Kirk." Damn it, Kirk. Not a teacher, but I was pathetic in high school. I was good friends with a semi-popular girl. I always had a good sense of humor, which I guess got us on good terms, who I had a massive crush on. She mentioned that all she wanted for her birthday was a hot cinnamon donut. She was craving them. On the morning of her birthday, I bought a box of 12. I biked to school so fast to get them there fresh. I had learned to break into a combination lock so I could put them in her locker, and she'd open it and find them as a surprise. She loved it. We had a long, complicated will they, won't they for our last 3 years of high school. Then we had a falling out. Now, I'm 24, and she's getting married this week to someone else. I'm very much over her, but can't help being a little bit sad about that. I bet he never broke into her locker with donuts. I was in the 3rd grade. Had a crush on a 4th grader. I was talking to my dad about it and he suggested writing her a poem to drop in her locker. So I came up with "I see you around, but only in school. I think you're real cute, and I think you're real cool." Dropped it off after school one day thinking I was the man as I walked out the school doors. All until I walked into my class the very next day to see both my teacher and my crush at the front of the class. She proceeded to read my poem out loud to the entire class. She then called me up in front of everyone and got down at eye level and said, "Honey, you're too young for love." I never saw that poor girl again. Never said I loved her. Just though she was real cute and real cool. WTF, that was needlessly mean of the teacher. Nerdy kid decided to go full Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You and lip-synced a Backstreet Boys song to a girl in the cafeteria. He had a big boom box with him. Turned it on in the middle of lunch, got on a table, and did the whole song complete with the exact dance from the music video. I don't remember the song, but I do remember the stunned silence as this went on for much longer than it should have. Needless to say, this did not go as well for him as it did for Heath Ledger in the movie. I will say that it took tremendous balls, a deep willingness to humiliate himself, and complete lack of concern about the social impact, so I complimented him when I saw him in class later. He stayed home sick the rest of the week. Not a teacher, but I'll share my cringe. I was 13/14 in grade 7. Being a really shy yet somewhat talkative person in addition to starting a brand new school, I didn't have any friends. Lots of acquaintances would be made, but no friends, so to speak. Anyway, one day in September, I was walking to class one day and saw this spiky-haired punk kid with glasses. I fell hard for him. I conspired with my one classmate. I got to know a little bit about him and basically hyped up every small glance that came my way from him. Eventually December came and I was driving myself mad over him and I not being together. So I got a Christmas ornament filled with candy and gave it to the classmate with specific instructions to give it to my crush and to pass along. I'd be waiting for him after school. After I gave it to her, I felt regret. Like any normal person, I rationalized that he'd take it as a joke and not even show. Wrong, he got there before I did and was waiting. Like any normal person, I totally stood him up. I felt bad, but my pride was more important. Come January, we all ended up in the same class, phys ed. I freaked a little, but ultimately didn't try to draw attention to how I felt about him. My crush and I eventually became friends of a kind and we formed a group during phys ed of people who'd play tetherball all the time. One March day, the ball hit my glasses and knocked them out of shape. My crush was the person who served the ball, so offered to help fix my glasses. As he was working on them, we talked a little and he said something and I kind of nodded and agreed to it. He suddenly looked up at me and shouted loudly, "It was you." He unmasked that I was the one who gave him the ornament and had a crush on him, in front of the now silent and watching class. I died of embarrassment. We never got together, nor did I ever really know how he felt. But he did pull a knife on me when we were walking with a couple of his friends and I told a teacher who got him expelled. So there's that. That was quite the ending. Unfortunate situation if being the teacher and the person the student had a crush on. On Valentine's Day, had my student present me with a rose in front of class singing "I'm in love with the teacher" to the tune of "I'm in love with the stripper." When did these big public displays to ask someone out start to be such a thing? Talk about setting up a situation designed to make someone uncomfortable. Was I just not a normal kid? Not a teacher, but a kid in one of my classes had a crush on this girl and would always try and ask her out on dates and she would always say no. So one day about a month before prom he barges into our French class, which he's not even a part of, and in the middle of the lesson gets down on one knee in front of the girl and takes out this huge rectangular wooden box and opens it up, and the top half has a mirror that has the words "You're so beautiful. Will you go to prom with me?" written in red lipstick. The bottom half has a bunch of expensive lipstick and makeup and stuff. She of course said yes in the moment to not embarrass him, but I asked her later how she felt about it and she said she took him aside privately in the hallway and told him what he did was sweet, but not cool for putting her on the spot like that, and she told him she wasn't going to prom with him and gave him the gifts back. Kid spent about $500 on makeup to give her. I am a teacher, but this didn't happen in my classroom. A friend of mine in college had a huge crush on a girl in one of his classes. She seemed pretty normal, but he's a gamer nerd socially awkward guy who seemed to think she was into him because she checked her lipstick at a pizza dinner they had gone to together, because he had read it somewhere online in a magazine. Totally a case of his imagination getting away from him. Anywho, a few weeks after the pizza dinner, which I'm sure he thought of as a date, he shows up at her dorm randomly with flowers and chocolates and proclaims his intentions. I'm sure she let him down very nicely, but he was crushed. It was so hard to watch from afar because I knew this girl was in no way into him, and there was nothing I could tell him that would persuade him otherwise. Not a teacher, but a student. The student decided to put in a play by himself, acting out all the roles. The play was of a prince who won over a princess and all that fairy tale stuff, including a dragon. Yes, he played all those roles. That student was I. However, in my defense, second grades are cringy like 24/7. Obligatory. Not a teacher, but was a student. In my freshman year pay class a couple years back, there was a kid who really liked this popular cheerleader. One day he comes into class with a folded up piece of paper. He goes over to the girl he likes, hands the paper to her, and walks away. He comes back over to us, and explains that he put a link to a SoundCloud rap he made about how she should dump her boyfriend and get together with him. For some reason, he didn't care that the boyfriend was literally standing in front of him as he told us. He moved schools about a week later. I am a teacher, but this story is about my nephew. I think he was about 9 when this happened. He was on the monkey bars and wanted to impress the group of girls standing near them. He tried to stand up on the money bars and ended up nosediving into the gravel. The girls gave him a dirty look and ran away, and he got 10 stitches in his chin. Poor kid. So I was a co-teacher for a while almost directly after high school, so I had a few issues where some of my students would try to hit on me. There was one senior boy who was an absolute sweetheart and great student. However, he had a huge crush on me. He heard me one day saying I wanted a Nintendo Switch, so he bought me 2 Switch games for Christmas at $60 a pop. I was flattered and thanked him for the gesture but had to decline. He kept being sweet and trying to get close to me until eventually he asked me to prom in front of my entire tutor group. I'll admit it took a lot of balls since he was so blunt and even invited me to an after prom weekend stay at a cabin. But it was so awkward. The whole table went silent and I didn't know what to say, but the kid in question took this as hesitation on my part. In his panic he quickly blurted out, "Don't worry, we don't have to have sex or anything if you don't want to," and I about died. Had to once again politely decline and slowly distanced myself from that kiddo. Felt bad since it was the talk of the school that week, but he ended up finding a lovely girl to go to prom with that wasn't his tutor. OMG. When I was in 7th grade there was this boy in 8th grade named Nick. We had bell choir together and he was super nice to me and I decided I liked him. So one day, I decided to draw him this anime girl holding a Valentine, basically asking him out and give it to him on Valentine's Day. I didn't hear back from him the whole day, but all of the 8th graders started whispering about me. Little did I know that he had a girlfriend in the 8th grade. I didn't even know who she was until her and like 4 of her friends came up to me and were like, "Gasp, that's her." When I found out he was dating someone, he had the picture I drew in his hand. I forgot exactly what he said, but I just remember shutting down and avoiding basically all the 8th graders until graduation LMFAO. I was mortified. And it was a small school too. Hahaha. I'm laughing but I'm still getting second-hand embarrassment from that memory. Holy crap. I also wasn't the best artist. I'm a young, reasonably attractive female of breeding age. I teach private music lessons. I had a senior boy last year come in for a singing lesson, and I knocked my music off of the piano. When I leaned over to grab it off the floor, I muttered, "Come here," and when I sat back up, the kid had leaned in for a kiss. We had a long talk about what is and isn't appropriate behavior. I think you're a robot based on that first sentence. I'm not a teacher, just a stupid girl. When I was in 5th grade I had the biggest crush on this kid, one of the popular pretty boys. He was in the class across from mine. One day I decided to draw on a giant piece of paper, us holding hands and watching fireworks with hearts and stars. I then folded it and put it in a clear plastic heart with a picture of myself and a love note. I had my friend put it in his locker. The reason I put a picture of myself in it was because I've had picture of him for years and I always kept it under my pillow or in a mini orange Bible my mom gave me. I looked at every morning and night. For some reason I hoped he'd keep my picture and do the same. Anyways, when recess came around he pulled out the plastic heart in front of everyone and opened it. He read the love letter out loud to everyone and laughed and made jokes about the picture I drew and laughed about me leaving a picture of myself in it. The plastic heart ended up broken on the floor, the drawing torn up and my photo in the hands of some creepy kid who tried to put his hand up my skirt. From that day forward I hated him. He tried to talk to me months later. Around that time his popularity was declining and I felt he was trying to see if he could still have me drooling over him. But without hesitation I told him he played no role in my life. He just walked away. Now being adults my friend told me he's ugly, does drugs and looks miserable. Thanks for reminding guys. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.